So DDS have worked with the Port of Dover for about 14 years. We've done 4 or 5 projects together successfully prior to coming into contract on this one. The works at Dover are very complex and technically challenging. In the landside works, whilst it has its challenges, it isn't really the centre focus of what is technical. It is the ED1 berth is where the technicalities come into play.
There was different challenges, different complexities to the actual whole scheme of it, from the fact that we had standard sort of steel frame structures in terms of the cargo sheds that we had, which was quite straightforward, and of course then that spans into ED1 and the marine work, which we've been involved in taking out berths before, just as the location of this one and the logistics working between the live port and the other berths that were involved has made it quite a challenge.
So the Port of Dover is a tightly controlled environment. They've got really strict health and safety requirements. They work to the highest standard. So the heavy goods vehicles that come into site have to be accompanied by a police car, which would escort them all the way through the site to our project working area. All of this has to be booked in well in advance. Inside the cargo terminal sheds, there was an electrical substation which fed numerous assets within the port. It was key for us to protect that whilst the works progressed. So we designed a crash deck system and a ranch board scaffold which housed around the electrical substation, which protected it for the duration of the works. ED1 is a roll and roll off ramp that is used to get vehicles onto the back of ferries. When we decommissioned ED1, we needed some space on the land to place the materials that we were cutting out of it. Obviously they're coming out in really big sections. So in order for us to do that, we decided to deal with the Dover cargo terminal sheds first. The idea being that we could get rid of the sheds, clear ourselves a big space on land. We could leave the slab of foundations here, which would be the hard stone in which we'd work on. Before even taking ED1 out of the sea, we had months of prep work to do with the divers. I mean, the structure itself was floated into position and sunk. That's how it was moved around. So the concern was for us, as we took the sand out of the ballast tanks, that the structure might be tempted to refloat itself, or at least become unstable. So as we was pumping the sand out, we was pumping water back in at the same rate. This made sure that the structure wasn't buoyant in any way. So our method was to use a Bell 100 pump, which we lowered into the ballast tanks to get rid of the ballast. And we only used the divers to basically cut holes in the side of the tank. This allowed the water to drain when we lifted it, and also to weld some angle brackets on the side, which stopped high pressure points on the cable when we did the lift as well. When the barge comes, this is an extremely bit of kit. It's probably the most expensive bit of plant that we've ever hired in over 30 years since our inception. What we didn't want to get was days and days of this barge sat idle while we were separating the separate parts of the structure that we were lifting off.
Once we'd completed the demolition of the Dover cargo terminals, that gave us enough room to undertake the lifting sequence of the ED1. Now, we undertook out with a shear leg, the largest shear leg in Europe from the Netherlands. So we lifted the seaward ramp and the finger flaps first, cut and lifted them off. Then we had to cut and lift the winch housing, the porthole legs, into another section. And then we undertook the main spanning deck, which was 50 metres long, 22 metres wide. Hence you can see the amount of room we had to have to lay these sections down. Once they had been lifted, we then undertook the lift of the submerged tank system, what was obviously beneath the waterline. Final works we had to do once the tank system had been lifted was break out the concrete pads what were on the seabed. Now, we had to break these out because the MMO licence states that the land has to be returned in its natural state. So these concrete pads had to be removed from the seabed. We decided to employ the services of the largest long reach in England. We sighted them on a jackleg barge. We broke the pads with the breaker on the seabed, and then we dredged them and loaded them onto land. Well, obviously there was the processing side of things to be undertaken.